The EU is ready to give way on under 30 migration demand for Starmer's softer Brexit. We're going to read into this exclusive from iNews, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an exclusive from iNews with the headline that the EU is ready to give way on the under 30s migration demand for Starmer's softer Brexit. Brussels seeks to make a deal for young people more palatable as the Home Secretary says net migration needs to come down. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share this across social media so others are notified of this video. So, I already know what's going to happen in the comments before you even say it, guys. This story, why is the Eye putting a headline like this in their newspaper and on their website? I have to say, it does feel extremely biased of the Eye to put such a story like this up. Because if they had been paying attention, they would have heard that Labour have consistently been saying that they do not want such a deal. They do not want any kind of deal that would allow free movement whatsoever. There was a Labour minister, I believe it was Yvette Cooper, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I believe there was a Labour minister who, as recently as a few days ago, literally said at the conference that they do not want to give any kind of freedom of movement because they indicate they see this deal of giving under 30s in the UK and in the EU, free passage basically between the UK and the EU, and they don't want to do that. They're worried and they're scared about the perception that it would create for the right wing media, and it's hurting youngsters with not having these opportunities and basically trying to force younger people to basically stay in the UK and make and study and learn and grow in the UK. Whereas some of them who do want to do that, some of them want the opportunities, the same opportunities that their parents, their grandparents had when they were part of the European Union, and they don't have those same opportunities as they do before. Because some of them, for example, don't have the money, as just one of many examples of this. So this story does not in any way. I don't buy this story. I don't buy this story because we've talked on numerous occasions about this scheme. That it comes across to me from what I keep hearing is that those in the EU are really trying to press. Those within the EU are trying to press for it. I've heard from people from people within the EU, colleagues, associates, and whatnot, and from EU stories that EU member states are literally telling the EU to kind of stop talking to the UK about this because Labour do not want to talk about this. But the other thing as well is that there's a reason why, despite Keir Starmer, since he became Prime Minister, there's one thing I have noticed. He's not had a meeting with Ursula von der Leyen. Now, there have been some stories where I've heard that he wants to meet Ursula von der Leyen to have discussions with her. And they have also heard stories where that she does not want to have any kind of discussions with the UK because the belief is that because they're not willing to impose the trade deal that was agreed by Boris Johnson, there's nothing really to talk about because they're not upending their side of the deal. And Keir Starmer's argument on that is obviously he wants to get a veterinary deal, which is why they want to have a discussion with the EU on that. But obviously you've got the veterinary deal that they said they want to try and get from the EU, but they don't want to deal with some of the other problems that many businesses are kicking and screaming about. Yeah, it's a bit of a all over the place thing. But we are going to read this story. And yes, I will say, like I said earlier, do take it with a massive pinch of salt. I would not call the Eye a paper that feeds lies and narratives. I don't accept that. I do think the Eye News does get some really good stories every now and then. But I do think they need to stop trying to imply that the EU is to imply this impression that the EU is obviously trying to give this, because I don't accept this premise, because I keep hearing very different configurations of what the Eye is saying here. But I'm sure some of you may agree to disagree. Some of you will say, well, this story is validated. Some of you will say there's no validation in this story at all. And some of you will say to me that you shouldn't even be covering it at all if you don't have full credibility in it. I will say that it's up to you whether you want to decide whether you want to take the story to truth or take it with a pinch of salt. But I've always said on my channel anyway that not everything that you read and hear and see is always factual anyway. It's always, whether you consensus or whether you believe, to take it with a pinch of salt. But one thing I do know is that while majority of the people in the UK do want to rejoin the EU, people obviously are not ready to have that. There are some people who are not ready to have that conversation, despite the fact that every single day it passes, our economy, our livelihoods are affected every single day because of Brexit. The word will never go away. There will never be a make Brexit work BS that Labour will impose in any way, shape or form. You can't make it work. It's just the reality. But it is hurting us every day that we are outside the EU. And it may be till 30 or even 50 years before we even rejoin. That's the reality of it. So the EU is ready to offer concessions to get a youth mobility deal with the UK over the line, in recognition that Sir Keir Starmer will need to sell any agreements to voters who want to reduce immigration, the Eye has learned. In a boost to Keir Starmer's Brexit reset, Brussels is willing to consider shortening the time that will ask for 18 and 13-year-old Europeans to be allowed to stay in the UK under a proposed youth migration deal. They've already stated, and it was stated at the Labour conference. Minister stated at the Labour conference that they did not want this because they consider it free movement. The Eye understands there is a feeling in the EU that they could give the Prime Minister a negotiated win that may help him sell any deal to voters who want less immigration. In a sign of how important this issue is for the government, he promised to Labour conference that he would cut number of people coming to the UK. The Minister said they have no plans to agree to migration for a deal with the EU, but EU negotiators believe that position could change. A youth mobility deal is a key EU in asking Brexit reset negotiations if Sir Keir wants to unlock new agreements on security and trade. But the UK has been cold on the idea due to fear it will be perceived as opening the door to higher migration. Yeah, and this is it. The Labour government does not want to be seen in any way, shape or form opening the doors for migration. A draft European Commission proposal, which is likely to become a concrete offer within 2 months of the negotiations in Brussels, calls for EU citizens aged 18 to 13 to be given the rights to travel to the UK for 4 years and vice versa. No, this will, as of right now, this will not happen. Not with the kind of media that we have. The media will jump on this saying that we're opening up the doors. Hence why this won't, and they've already stated they're not going to agree to such a deal. As of right now, doesn't mean that they won't change their opinion down the road. The document also calls for British universities to stop charging Europeans higher international student fees. Both these demands will be difficult to accept for the government, which is under pressure over high levels of immigration and struggling university finance. Sir Keir has repeatedly said he has no plan to agree to such a policy and stressed there will be no return to free movement under his premiership. But the Eye has been told that the EU is prepared to give ground on the length of time adults under the age of 30 would be allowed to remain in the UK, potentially cutting it from 4 to 2 or 3 years. It will help make a deal more palatable to the Prime Minister by allowing him to paint youth mobility as an exchange rather than a migration scheme. No, it doesn't matter how you paint the scheme. The media will call it what it is. They will call it migration. They will call it as giving people freedom of movement. That's the problem. The problem is not the deal itself. The problem isn't the idea isn't great. The problem is the perception that the media will have on this. The right wing, the narrative that will be painted by those is it will just feed more fuel to that fire. And believe me, I understand how much people want this deal, especially if they have youngsters in their 30s and youngsters who to give them that opportunity. I totally understand that. But Labour are too scared of the perception it will create for them. Senior government insiders have also expressed confidence that the EU will back down on some of its other proposals, notably the demand that European students should be entitled to lower university fees and not have to pay premium international fees, which the UK is unlikely to ever accept. But the difficulty both sides will face in getting any deal over the line is highlighted by Yvette Cooper with an interview with the Eye, as the Home Secretary insisting net migration needs to come down. Sir Keir told his party's conference in Liverpool that he would cut immigration. I have never thought that we should be relaxed about some sectors importing labour where there are millions of young people ambitious and highly talented who are desperate to work and contribute to their community. Trust me, there are plenty of examples of apprenticeships starting going down at the very same time that visa applications for the same skills are going up, and so we will get tough on this. The EU is nevertheless understood to be confident a deal can be achieved, with ministers potentially more likely to engage with the idea of once net migration levels decrease as a result of visa crackdown launched by the government in their final months in power. Ms Cooper fired a warning shot that striking such a deal could hinder her job as bringing down net migration. Asked whether the UK could strike a youth mobility deal, she told the Eye, no, net migration needs to come down. Net migration tripled in the last 4 years, and underpinning that the overseas recruitment went up by sevenfold. And so we have been very clear net migration must come down. She added the European reset is really important. We want very close cooperation, but the UK voted to leave the EU as also part of the manifesto. We were clear that there were no returns to free movement to the customs union or the single market. We need to build a new relationship, including better economic relationships, but also the security cooperation that is really important. We have been very clear about the priorities. Net migration needs to come down. Yep, they said it. She said it quite a number of times there. The net migration needs to come down. Yes, of course. Net migration needs to come down. Yes, of course. You keep saying that. Well, there's just one problem. There's just one tiny little problem with that. We don't have the workers in this country to fill the vacancies. There are not enough British workers to fill the vacancies that we need. We don't have enough British doctors. We don't have enough British teachers. We don't have enough British other things. So what do you do when you don't have enough of those vacancies? Yeah, you need to get them from abroad to fill those gaps. Now, I've already said this before, and I've said this again. For those who don't like immigration, for those who want everything to be British jobs for British workers, they cannot tell me that they think everything is free. They have to be willing to spend more in order for them to, if they want British jobs for British workers. We have to be willing to put our hands in our pockets and invest in 20, 30, 50 years time in order to make this happen. But at the same time, you have to accept we need more workers to fill the vacancies and the gaps that we have in our market at the moment. We just don't have enough workers. We just don't have enough British workers for these jobs. And you're not going to get them by pulling people out of, those who are on disability benefits or those who are on the universal credit. They're not. Some of them there are not qualified for doctors and nurses. You might get a few doctors, nurses. You might get a few key workers for some sectors, but there's still going to be lots of vacancies. Still, it's not going to plug the gaps. So what we need is workers from abroad, and because we can't get them from the EU, guess what we've been doing? We've been getting workers from the global market, from Asia, from Africa instead, because we need those workers. But for some people, they would rather have an unqualified white British man caring for their mum who is doing the job not because he wants to do it, but because he has no choice to do it. Otherwise, he will lose his benefits. And then that person could do something absolutely horrible. There would be an absolutely tragic story, and everybody will be asking, why did it happen? Oh, it was because he was forced against his will to do it. Because the British people and the right wing did not want to bring in a foreign worker, a qualified worker to take care of that person's nan, and instead they gave it to an unexperienced white British adult who never wanted to be in daycare, but was in daycare, but was forced into it anyway, because they wanted to fill the gaps of the vacancies that we had. You can see the narrative being painted here. Now, I may be exaggerating with such a story, but it's entirely possible that such a story can happen and will happen as long as we continue down this narrative road. But what do you guys think? What do you guys make of this whole story, this fiasco about the immigration, Brexit, what Yvette Cooper said in exclusive from the Eye? What do you guys make of the actual story in the headline itself from them? Do you think the Eye are being fair and reasonable with what they're saying on this? Let me know your thoughts and more down in the comments section below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate shares across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.